Hello, I'm Tracy Coleman, and I'm going to talk with you about station rotation as a blended learning model and how to set yourself up for success with station rotation and manage effective rotations in your classroom. Why use station rotation? Station rotation is a blended learning model that can be seen as the umbrella that ties together elements of effective instruction and technology tools. Rotations allow students to move around the room as they engage in a variety of activities that you create at learning centers within your classroom. As they move, you have the opportunity to work with small groups of students who need intervention or enrichment, or just time for teacher discussion. It provides great opportunities for differentiation because all students are moving around the room and engaged in activities, but they do not necessarily need to be the same activities. So you can differentiate based on student readiness, choice, or even student needs. The research of Carol Ann Tomlinson supports differentiation, and as I said, differentiation can be achieved through the station rotation model. You can also include learning contracts, different entry points for students at the stations, learning menus that you develop in the stations, or compacting, where you narrow the student learning goals to the things that you have at your stations. Why use technology at stations? Well, a station rotation can be done without any use of technology, but technology can help you to manage multiple things happening in the same classroom with just you as the single teacher. Stations can involve web tools like Actively Learn, Quizlet, Newsela, No Red Ink, or any other online site that you choose. Some lessons that make great rotations are lessons where maybe you did all the talking, where some hands-on activity for students would have broken up the experience for them and maybe help them delve into different aspects of the content with small groups. Maybe you can take a lesson that did not produce the results you had hoped and turn it into a station rotation so that you can meet individually with students to assess their progress as they work. You could also use rotations to improve lessons in which students could have been challenged more due to prior knowledge, and you could provide the prior knowledge, and then the station could be those challenges that students need while you work with small groups to bring them up to speed. Good station rotation lessons can also involve scaffolding due to a poor lack of prior knowledge, where you're meeting with students. Some students are taking off at stations and moving forward while you're having other students move more slowly in order to gain the foundational skills they need to be successful. When developing a station rotation, it is a good idea to make decisions before you start. Here is a link to a planning document to help you make those decisions in advance. Before I do any station rotation lessons, I think in advance about how I'm going to formatively assess students to decide who needs what from the lesson. Will I do that before the lesson, or will I do it during the lesson? I then decide how I will formatively assess students, and you see here there are a lot of options in terms of figuring out what students need before they can move forward. I also think about how I'm going to group students. Will they be homogeneous groups? Will they be heterogeneous groups? Or will they be student choice? They decide who they want to work with and where they want to go in the stations. It's important to consider how many stations there will be and whether or not I will be one of the stations. I usually am because I like to use the station rotation model to meet with smaller groups of students so that they can get more one-on-one attention. Because I am one of the stations, I also have to think about how to keep students on task when they're not with me. Oftentimes, I will do a standing station where students are talking with me in the middle of the room so that I can have eyes on everyone else who is working. It's important to think about the layout of the room. and how I will rearrange the furniture to maximize stations. Because I have 30 students in each of my classes, I sometimes also need to pull in furniture from neighboring rooms. I always consider, will students go to all the stations? Sometimes I set up more stations than are needed. For example, I have a rotation day where there are 8 stations, but students only need to go to 4 of them. So I set them on a path, and then sometimes there's student choice, or sometimes I tell them where to go for all of their stations. I consider how students will know where to go. Very often, I'll give my formative assessment before the lesson, and then on the formative assessment, when I return it to students, I will mark down their paths. Station 1, Station 6, Station 8, and that's how they will know where to go. How will students know what to do in each station? I always have very specific instructions for stations, and because we do them with some frequency, students know what the expectations are. I colorfully identify my stations, but that's always something that I think about in advance. I think about what students will do if they have questions, how I can make myself available even when I'm working with small groups to also be a resource for students who are working in the stations during that time. Another important factor is having a student guide. I always have something that students do before and during the station so that there's some accountability for the work that they have completed. And lastly, I always consider the question, will students reflect or self-assess at the end of the station process? You can use the form I've provided to plan your own stations. And if you would like more information about the station rotation model, or if I can help design, please email me at coleman@mentorschools.org. I would love to help you plan station activities.